Welcome, everyone, to the Insurance and Beyond podcast. I am Devin Ransom, one of your hosts, along with my good friends Mike and Chuck. Guys, together we are the Insurance and Beyond podcast. This is actually episode 5, so we're going into and we're kind of chugging along here, guys. Last week, we just completed our part 2 of series of Compensation and Beyond. If you didn't have a chance to listen to that, I encourage you to go back and check out the Compensation and Beyond podcast. Part 1 and part 2, you're going to want to listen to those, order. And then episode 2 was Revenue and Beyond. So go back and check that out. Each one of these podcasts are really designed to kind of build on top of each other as we progress. This particular episode is called Control the Controllables. Your controllables and beyond. Your revenue you can control to an extent. Your compensation you can control to an extent. Your agency you can control. Your staff. All these different types of things. And so many times as agency owners, we sit there and we worry about the things that we can't really control. If we spent the time, effort, and energy going in and building out the things that we can control, focusing on those things that we can control as an agency, how much better and how much more productive would the agency become? So without further ado, we'll get into that here in just a second, but guys, we had a big weekend. We had some successes. We had some challenges in the college football arena. NFL is getting ready to kick off just around the corner, but really, I think the most important thing to the vast majority of us is the college football.
Yep.
So we had some winners, we had some losers. Maybe we could go down those roads a little bit. Let's talk about some of these games. Chuck,
how about we start with Chuck?
I'm wearing black today for a reason. The end of the day, still a Gator through and through. We'll die a Gator. But you guys know how much of a believer I am in Billy Napier, but I don't know. The team follows a coach, and he did not look. I did not see the enthusiasm. I did not see the energy. We tried to stay out there. Why we wore white, don't really understand it since they were in all white. But we almost made it a home game. They brought up a ton of folks. Gainesville was all Miami while we were up there. But outside, the one glimpse of goodness that I have with it is the game is over. And Monday was a holiday, and we played Samford with our backup quarterback because our first-string quarterback got hurt. So, it's just, if it was such thing as a dumpster fire, that would be pretty much close to what it is.
Well, though, Chuck, I watched part of that game. I watched the beginning of it in between other games, and many, many times those broadcasters were talking about how Florida probably has the hardest schedule in football this year.
They do.
So,
but outside is, and that's great. But here's the thing: if you're a competitor, compete all 4 quarters. You saw Georgia; they compete. Don't jog when you're on the field. Run.
Yeah.
And I heard a perfect quote today. It goes, if that were one of our earlier teams, the players would have been on the sideline punching each other in the face saying, get in the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, there is all the outside stuff that I loved about creating and building men. And I heard this today too. All that stuff about football's about savages and animals, man. When you put out to it, you want killers on the field. You don't want them killing off the field.
Yep.
But you want some not so normal people out there playing, especially when you're talking about defensive, offensive line. So, I'm trying to get past it. It'll take me a little while. Thank God today was a holiday, and we'll move forward.
Yeah.
Back to you.
Yeah, I was at the Georgia game on Saturday, and there was a lot of orange there for Clemson, and I was really happy that Georgia came on top, and they came in and they actually really dominated that game. Pretty much,
they really did. He really did.
The first half was really actually kind of boring. We didn't really perform well, but it was one of these things to where we went back and forth down the field. There was no really any touchdowns going on. We had a couple of field goals to finish up the first half. The second half was a whole nother story, right? I think Coach Smart came out there and really probably gave them a really solid pep talk in the locker room. If I was a fly on the wall, I would have really paid for that one. But they came out with a vengeance for the second half, and they kind of turned that around.
And that's That's really telling because you know how our coach's demeanor is. You know how much I love our coach's demeanor. So if he had a locker room talk, your guys had a locker room talk, and they both came out based on the locker room talk, what the hell was said in the locker room?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
Mario said something right because they came out and ran down, scored a touchdown.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't waste any time either.
Hell, they shook all of our recruits' hands after the game. We had over 60 recruits there watching that stuff. I mean, that's the stuff that makes you sick.
Yeah. I mean, Miami to be fair, Miami's put together a really solid team this year.
They both
really
had
have.
3 years. They both had 3 years. They both had 3. We're tired.
The
game's just started.
I know. I mean, there is some lining. You know what? And I don't blame any of the kids. This is not the players' fault. This is literally the head of the organization, which could be a good transition into what we're going to talk about today, the controllables. Because, you know, how you walk in, how you react, how you respond is how you tell your folks to respond, whether you're using words or not. So if I come in and I'm in a great mood that day, I will bring everyone up in the office's mood that day. If I come up in a bad mood that day, everyone's mood's going to come down, no matter what their mood is. So you're always on show. So when you go in, I don't care what it is, you got to erase everything in your head, walk in there like this team is the best thing ever, and make them perform because you are their catalyst for how much your revenue your agency is going to make.
You know, and
100%.
Absolutely. And let's use that as a great segue into another point that we could talk about on controlling the controllables, and that is the agency culture. That ultimately always comes down to the agent, okay? Or in this example, the coach. So as the business owner, the agent, coach, whatever it is, as you go into your office, you're having a bad day, your culture in that agency is going to go backwards. Yeah. You know, your people are going to see it. More is caught than taught. You know, they catch it. Now, if you come in and you're riding a wave of positivity, of momentum, even if you are down, if you come in and turn yourself around for the betterment of that agency, that's going to help that culture. It's going to bring people up. Well, we all know with our staff, the minute they start going backwards, well, you know, they do not perform. So performance in the agency, you know, Chuck, you're absolutely right. There's performance on the field. Our field is inside that agency. What are they doing? Are 100%. They selling? Are they retention? You know, are they making those outbound calls? Are they making those calls just warm and fuzzies, whatever it takes? Well, when they start going backwards, they don't do it. You know, and then you've got to get onto them, and guess what? The morale, the positivity, it keeps going backwards. But it all starts with the coach, and that's who we are. All of us that's listening to this, we are the coach of our agencies. So absolutely 100% control that controllable because it's on you. It's very, very difficult. Our staff has no idea what we go through, especially early on in your agencies, because I'll say it, guys, and everyone who's been there. First 3 or 4 years, there's times you never take a paycheck. You know, you don't know where anything's coming from, but you can't let them see how bad that affects you.
But they didn't choose that for you. You chose it.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You've got to put on that face. You've still got to be positive. You've still got to be the leader.
But that's the interesting part, right? You've seen agents who are very upset that they literally had to dig in their pocket and pay their staff and go into debt. And then they take it out on their staff, and their staff's confused. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You know, wait. Yeah. This is what we agreed on. I mean, you know, so it's very hard, but at the same token, still be a human being because they sniff out fake.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of result back to some of the days where, you know, do you want to be a motivator or do you want to be an inspirer? And then the reason I kind of like those is because people think on the surface they're about the same, but when you peel it back, you know, are you waking up, getting your staff going every day? There's a certain turning point at the beginning where you're the person pushing them, keeping them going, making them feel best they possibly can. And I won't say better than they are, but, you know, outperforming their mental, personal potential that's stuck in their head. That's what you're doing. Okay. At a certain point, when that staff is so vested in you because of how you made them feel, then it turns into an inspirational relationship. And what I mean by that is that's when they come to you and everything they can to make sure you never had a bad day. When I've seen agencies where they transform from the one, which is motivation, into the inspiration, those guys don't even have to show up for a half hour. The staff's checking in, making sure, hey, just want to let you know, I hit my 18 contacts for the day. Hey, just want to let you know, I know you wanted me to sell 5, but we sold 16. That's kind of the dynamics of the culture you want to build. And it is a build. You can't just jump in and say, all right, I want everyone to be inspired and I want you guys to care about me. See you tomorrow.
Right. And motivation doesn't last. Inspiration does. You know, Chuck's exactly right. There's a quote out there, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it said motivation only lasts a day, just like a bath. That's why you got to start all over every day. You know, but when you inspire someone, Chuck, you're 1,000% on point. They're going to come in early. They're going to check in with you. You know, you don't have to push them. It's kind of the same thing with happiness and joy. You know, happiness is just a fleeting emotion. I can get happy because I went to Dairy Queen. But when you've got joy, man, it exudes from you and everybody feels it, and it's a bigger thing. But yeah, absolutely. Inspiration is how you've got to look.
Well, really, as an agency owner, one of the things that you have to do is you have to have been able to do pretty much everything inside of your office. You have to have been able to do that. Whatever you're requiring your staff to do, you need to have done it already. If I'm asking them to sell a certain number, they need to know that I've done that. I've hit those numbers on a consistent
100%.
basis and that it can be done, right? If you're going in, you're asking them to do something that you have never done before, how in the world are you going to motivate them to do it or keep inspiring them to grow, go beyond themselves? So many of these football coaches, so many of these baseball coaches, anybody that's been successful that's out there, they have done it. They've played the positions. They've played in that field before. They've gone in and they've been the sub coaches. They've been the defensive coaches. They've been the offensive coaches. They have done every single job as a coach to become the head coach because, you know, it's hard to be the head coach when you haven't done all the other jobs. In order to tell somebody what they're able to do or how to do it, you have to have created that culture first. Winning cultures don't just all of a sudden happen, right? Winning cultures are developed, and it doesn't matter whether it's happening on the field, whether it's football or baseball. You know, inside of your agency, to have that winning culture, that has to be cultivated. That has to be created. And that all starts with you as the agency owner. The buck stops with you as the agency owner. If you don't like the culture, if you don't like your revenue, if you don't like the compensation structure that you have, you are the agency owner. You are the one that can change those things inside of your agency. If you don't like the attitude that's going on inside the agency, well, there's a reason that it's like that, right? You have to go in and you have to show up every day positive. Your staff feed off of you. They feed off of what you do and also what you don't do. When you go in, you show up at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and then you leave at 2 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon, your staff notices that, right? They understand that. And the reality is does your staff work as hard when you're there or when you're not there?
And I would put a spin.
Go ahead, Chuck.
No. I want to put a spin on that because there's two things that really pop in my head. Number one, you don't have to be the best at everything in order to be a good leader in it.
That's correct.
Some people misconstrue it. Michael Jordan is not a basketball coach for a reason because he would not have the patience to develop people. So, you know, when you're out there thinking about it, it's more about standing so you can empathize with what you're asking, understanding that picking up that phone is painful and saying to him, look, dude, this is painful. The reason we're here today is because I did that 15 years ago to get to a point where I can train someone to take my spot at a later date. That's number one. Number two, culture. Culture usually has a purpose and a vision that everyone is driving towards. You've got to have that nailed. it's not about just coming in and quote volume and how much I want of this and how much I want of that. It's a true vision of how you see your agency impacting people's lives, impacting the community, how you're impacting the community. All of that stuff comes into play when you're kind of going through these things. And then for those of you, and I don't want you to misconstrue where Devin was going. If you're in late because you were out doing marketing stuff and it was purpose driven, you're working. Don't
Correct.
confuse office time with productive time.
Correct.
I can be extremely productive seeing 14 people outside of the office, or I can come out and say, man, I'm going home. What the hell? It's kind of one of those days, man. My wife keeps calling me and saying, hey, blah, blah, blah. It's the optics of what you're doing when you're away that is either going to
Correct.
inspire me or drive me down. And that's what I wanted to make sure that you
Yes.
guys are here.
When
Yeah,
I
I
started
mean-
as an associate,
Right.
the primary agent would always tell me, you're not going to make money sitting behind your desk. You've
A true story.
got to go out and
Uh-huh.
talk to people. You know, you have to. But again, Chuck, absolutely right. It's the optics of what you're doing. And especially some of these agents, and we'll call it as it is, yeah, they leave every afternoon and then they post from the golf course on
Correct.
Facebook.
The boat.
Okay. Yeah. Or the boat, you know, and it's okay to take those days, but when they're 3 days a week, and then you look at your staff going, why aren't you selling more for me?
Yes.
Wrong
Correct.
culture.
And if you do take those days, take it after you gave your staff one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, the two biggest things that will change the culture of your agency, and I see a lot of agents never do this anymore, simply saying please and thank you to your staff.
Right.
When you have something that you need your staff to do, when you're delegating, say please. Hey, could you please work on this for me? Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, how many agents, you all know them. Hey, I need this done. Bring us back by 3. Yeah, the job may get done, but the culture didn't.
And you can be stern. You can be respectful. Everyone's got a different personality and flair to it. Be
Mhm.
you about it, but respect them. They respect you more. I mean, that's just basically what
Yes.
it boils down to.
Absolutely.
Well, when you go in and you're dealing with building out your culture, you know, I think it's important, especially in this day and age, to where insurance is a little bit more difficult to work in than it used to be, right? It's, you know, clients are calling in, they're more upset
Mhm.
because, I mean, when the carriers go up on their rates, you can't control that, right? You can't control the
Right.
premium. You can't control what these carriers are doing. You can control your response to what these carriers are doing. You can control how you respond to the clients. You can respond to them with sympathy or empathy, or you can just say, you know what, it is what it is. Unfortunately, I really can't help you, right? That's when your client goes shopping. You know, if you respond with sympathy and empathy, you know, let's see what we can do. I definitely understand how you feel. You know, let's see if there's some discounts that we can add. Let's see if there's, you know, maybe a carrier out there that we can go in and rewrite you to, take you over here, take you over there, try to retain that business in some way, form, or fashion. But guys, I think doing office outings and taking your staff to fun events really kind of goes a long way, you know, with how they feel about you, how they feel about their agency, and how they feel about their other coworkers. You know, one of the things that my staff really looks forward to is every year we go in and we rent a suite at the Gwinnett Stripers game. It's the AAA Braves affiliate. But, you know, we go in and we get one of these suites. It's a 20-person suite. We have all the food and the beer and whatever else is there. They're in there. They're able to bring their spouses and, you know, bring the families and have a really good time, right? It builds on that team. And it's one of those things that we look forward to every year. We go in and we do a company Christmas party. I'll do probably 2 or 3 types of events with staff, whether taking them out to Top Golf. Maybe we just close the office early for a half a day or something like that. Put a note on the door and go someplace. Go do something. You know, and it could be one of these things to where it's somewhat unexpected when you're doing these things. So, you know, all those things kind of play into your culture. It's important to make sure that you're rewarding your staff for the hard work that they're putting in, because they do go hard for you day in and day out.
Yeah. They
Right.
honestly, our staff probably has it harder than we do.
Yes.
They really
They
do. They're
100% do.
Yeah, they're dealing with all the clients that are mad. You know, they're going through a lot worse than we are. So anything you can do, like Devin said, anything you do for your staff, they will appreciate it, especially if they don't ask.
And you don't
Correct.
have to be calculated. Do not be calculated.
Mm-mm.
They're human beings first. So if you see that they're struggling one day outside, go have them take a smoke break or, go do something, because 5-10 minutes away after a bad call and you recognize that, oh, wow, you understand my job is tough, because every time you don't ignore something, whether it's good or bad, they want to know if you're paying attention, but more importantly, that really translates to care. If you care, then it comes back. If you don't care, it starts to derail, and then they become the alpha in the agency, and then the cancer begins. And then that's what I mean by that. Some things you can control the controllable on. And one of those is making sure they know that you are the head of the organization. You are driver of the culture. It is your vision, and everyone needs to row towards it. But they also need to understand that what they're doing each and every day is getting closer to that fulfillment, and that there is a purpose that they have with the organization to help fulfill it. And more importantly, they believe in it.
Correct.
Yep.
And guys, there's one thing that we do have to mention in here, because sometimes you can go in and be one of these agency owners or executive or whatever it is that you call yourself, to where you can take that and be embedded inside of your agency, maybe a little too much, right? To a point to where you're oversharing the things that are going on inside your agency. If you're having revenue difficulties, do not share that with your staff.
No.
Yeah, I had a person that I knew, she was having revenue difficulties inside her agency, and she was sharing that with her top sales producer. And what happened to her top sales producer? Her top sales producer left. And why did she leave? Because she was afraid that she wasn't going to get a check.
Exactly.
She was afraid that she wasn't going to be able to take care of herself. So if you have things that's going on, make sure you're sharing up. If you're trying to redo compensation plans, don't talk about redoing the compensation plans with your staff. Talk about that with someone else. Talk about that with another agency owner, sales manager, whoever else. Talk about issues that's going on inside of your agency. Talk about them up to someone else. Do not have those conversations with inside your agency. That will kill your agency. It will kill your staff.
Yep.
You cannot do that. We talked about, it was a quote that I gave in episode 1, which is, you can't control the wind, but you can adjust the sails. Meaning, it's not what happens to you, it's how you react. It's how you react with inside your agency on what these carriers do, how they do it, appointments that you can have. Guys, for our agency, I know how it is. I know what it's like to not have a market to take homes to. In our Texas market right now, man, we went probably 3 weeks without having a home carrier to actually take anything to, because the market in Texas is so difficult. We're finally able to sweet talk a carrier into opening up and say, look, let's give us a trial run. After 90 days, go back and take a look at our loss ratio on the business that we wrote. And if it's still good, let us continue to write business. Do it on a 90-day basis. It's one of those things to where you have to think outside the box a lot of times when you're dealing with some of these carriers on how you're able to write business, build your business, and gain agency momentum. It's important to be able to have these carriers that you take products to. If there's something that you're specializing in, make sure you have enough carriers to spread that out to, because at the end of the day, if one of those carriers says, you know what, we're not going to write that anymore, you've got to find something else. And you spent all this time, effort, and energy developing this product. A perfect example of that is when I'm dealing with the former military vehicles. I deal with those a lot. I probably have the largest amount of former military vehicles out there in the market. I insure over 1,500 of these things across the country. I write anywhere between 2 to 3 more military vehicles a day inside of my agency. But some of the carriers have gone in and says, hey, you know what? If these vehicles aren't 20 years old or older, we're not going to touch them. And so I had to go in and figure out markets, because a lot of the former military vehicles that are being sold right now are 2007, 2008, 2011, 2012. Well, these things have 6-digit serial numbers. Well, the problem with that is, with having a 6-digit serial number, you try to go write that on any of your standard regular auto carriers, they have to do a 17-digit VIN verification. It is not going to work. So you have to take that down the commercial road, or you have to take it down, a collector car market, and you have to be able to make things fit. You have to have carrier appetite in which to take whatever it is that you're specializing in, and make sure that you're seeing the writing on the wall. As there are so many agencies that were former exclusive Nationwide agencies. When Nationwide went independent in 2020, so many of these agents, when they stuck their head in the sand, they said, you know what, I'm going to continue being that exclusive agent. And they didn't pick up any additional carriers. They didn't grab any additional carriers. So when Nationwide went and stopped writing almost nationally in June of 23, June 12th of 23 is when they stopped writing nationally. So a lot of these agents, they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Well, by that time, it was too late, because when they stopped writing nationally, all these other carriers stopped appointing agencies. And then when Travelers went in and they did what they did, they said, okay, well, if you have an unbalanced book, you have too many homes versus autos, we're going to cancel you. If your loss ratios we're going to cancel. If you haven't written enough business over here, we're going to cancel. If you don't have enough quotes in our system, we're going to cancel your appointment. And guys, these carriers, they know that the easiest way for them to go in and reduce business off their books, because they don't own that business, right? All they have to do is terminate the agency's appointment, and they can go in and cancel all that business. That is the fastest way for them to get off business in certain sectors. So if you're in a part of the country, whether it's California, Texas, Florida, any of these places, Georgia, or New York, that have really difficult markets, you got to make sure that you're crossing your T's and you're dotting your I's, and you're watching your business carefully. You're watching what your producers are writing. Make sure that they're not writing garbage onto the books of business, because at the end of the day, that's going to affect whether you're going to be able to stay in business or whether you're going to be able to flourish. It's important to make sure, whether you feel that carrier is a good partner or not, if they're giving you specific instructions on what you can and cannot write, make sure you're writing within their guidelines. Because at the end of the day, they don't have to keep you appointed, right? They can let your appointment go. And one of the great things about these gentlemen that I have on here with me, Chuck takes care of a lot of carriers. He deals day in and day out with a lot of carriers. Mike deals with a lot of carriers. I deal with a lot of carriers, right? And it's important to make sure that whatever it is that they're asking you for your agency, make sure that you're doing the things necessary to retain them. Because the reality is, right now, there's not a lot of carriers out there that are appointing. There are some, and we're going to mention some here a little bit, but there's not a lot out there that's appointing right now.
And they're very picky.
Yeah. They are extremely picky. So let's go in, let's maybe talk about some of these carriers. There's a new carrier that's out there right now that does pretty much monoline auto. They're starting to appoint in various states across the country. There's been a management system that's out there that's put advertisements out there. And this particular carrier was a direct-to-consumer carrier. A lot of people might know who they are. They're called Geico. Geico is out there. We've worked with a company for the last 2 years to help try to bring them to market, and that has finally come to fruition. And agents can now go in, they can get a direct appointment with Geico selling personal lines auto and commercial lines auto.
Yeah.
Yep. You can get that now within your agency in certain states. For more information, you can email us at podcast@insandbeyond.com. That's INSAND beyond.com. Email us there. We can give you a full list of carriers that are currently appointing. There's other carriers out there. Hanover is currently appointing in certain states. Chubb is currently appointing in certain states for both personal lines and commercial. You do have a certain amount of premium with Hanover. There's a certain amount of premium that you do have to hit. You do have those agency minimums that you have to do. So any of these carriers that you're trying to bring on, you got to make sure that you have the capacity to be able to feed these carriers. That's one of the problems with going in and adding multiple carriers. It's great to have a bunch of them, but if you can't feed them,
you're going to lose them. Yeah, when Nationwide went independent, I know several agents that were so happy we were going independent, but they were getting all these appointments. They were getting appointed with 6, 8, 10 different carriers. And I know I'd often ask them, guys, how are you going to feed all of them? Because it doesn't do any good to get 10 carrier appointments to lose 7 of them next year for production.
Correct.
Now a lot of them, they may not want a lot of production. A lot of them want a lot of production. But either way, if you can't feed them, you're going to lose your appointment. Well, I don't want to take a chance at getting an appointment with the carrier, losing the appointment with the carrier, and then 3 years later trying to get it back. Because the chances of getting it
What's
back
different?
are probably
What's
pretty slim.
changed?
Right. So now you've got to really stretch to get it. So be strategic in the carriers. Make sure you talk to them. Make sure you find out what their minimum productions are. Make sure you find out if there's certain stipulations that they have on you as an agent. And again, having carriers is great, but if you've got 3 or 4 or 5 good carriers, you may not need 2 or 3 more.
Correct.
Also, if you're looking in regionals, if you're looking at regional, like one of the carriers I just picked up, Chuck has, which is Slide Insurance. Slide Insurance, they're writing in Florida and South Carolina. They are expanding into some of the more difficult states, including California, Texas, and Louisiana. But one of the things with Slide Insurance is they are a home-only carrier. In order to write the dwelling fire inside of them, they have to have the primary home in the same state. That's one of the things for the qualifier. Now, they do include wind. They do include all these other different types of things. So they don't exclude, those coverages. So you don't have to go to the Florida wind pool, or you don't have to go to the South Carolina wind pool when they're opening up out in Texas. You're not going to have to go to TWIA, which is the Texas wind pool. It's important to make sure that whatever it is that you're bringing in is really going to fit your goals of your agency. What is it that you want to write? At the same time, that you're going to be able to get the compensation. A prime example of compensation is when you're looking at a company like Byberg. Byberg says, Byberg has a great appetite, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, they only pay 5% commission too.
Yes.
So is that really going to be worth your time? If you're doing a 50-50 split, they're getting 2.5%, your agent's getting 2.5%, and you as the agency is getting 2.5%.
It's basically costing you money to write it.
Amazing deal, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations, you lost money because you wrote that policy.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you really sit down and do some research, which most of us may or may not have, you really ought to look at the revenue coming in versus policies sold and get an idea of how much commission it takes to operate your business. Yeah. Meaning, of the total of all of it, you need 7.8% commission to run everything, or 9.1, or wherever it is. There's a number there. You really need to know what that number is. You need to know what percentage of commission pays the bill. And then when a carrier dismisses a bonus for a year, reduces commission, we've been seeing that the past year and a half. How many carriers have come back and said, well, we're cutting commissions now? Well, if you start cutting commissions below that threshold that you need, you're losing money having them.
Yeah, well, the carriers figured it out. So Wild Wild West, big organization, bunch of agents, new in the industry. It's calmed down. Now it's back to getting profitable again. So you'll see a lot of strategic plays based on the carriers because they do want to come back in. But now they know, like especially your former captive ones, they know they don't have total control. They know that you can sell other lines, not just their line. It makes it a little bit different as far as how they feel and they're approaching this. And you're starting to see that shift. That being said, the other piece you're seeing is they're getting expense conscious too. So now anywhere they can pull back, so they're looking at each other's comp structures or looking at each other's bonus payouts, and they're trying to moderate that as well. So, one of the reasons you get with networks is the ability to pool the benefits of everyone to drive some business to you, because, I would rather run a 100-yard dash than 110-yard hurdles. And what working with these networks do is it helps you with getting there at your pace. You're going to get a bonus $1.
Absolutely.
As you're looking at building out your agency, you're looking at building out your compensation structures, you're looking at building out your revenue, building out your marketing, building out your staff. You're trying to figure out what carriers do I need? Because you can have the best sales guy in the world, but if they don't have the right type of products that they can sell on, they're not going to do anything.
That's
They're
right.
not going to be able to sell anything because they don't have the right products that they can sell onto.
Got it.
It's important to make sure that you're going in and you're getting the right carriers for your agents for them to be able to sell. So, as we're going in and continue to build out this podcast, and, we want to hear from you guys. We want to hear from you. What are your pain points? What is it that you care about? What do you want to know more about? Guys, I've probably forgotten more than I know inside the insurance industry and, dealing with the agency itself. And I really think that as we're going in and working on this particular episode, I really think that we can go in and build out a second episode just on the controllables, because I think this is really kind of important. I think it's important for us to go in and maybe spend a little bit more time in this particular category. Maybe we can go in on the next episode. We'll talk about maybe staff turnovers, which goes into your culture aspects. Some of these things that we can't control, but the reality is even the things that we can't control, we kind of have a play into that process, right? Being able to control some aspects of it. Because it's just like we talked about pre-show, which was, you can't really control your staff turnover, but you can by going in and creating the culture necessary. If you have bad culture, if it's a toxic culture, you're going to have staff turnover from that culture.
Yeah.
Right.
And the key is, can you learn? And that's right. And can you learn and fix it?
Correct.
You can't control the first one leaving, but you can control the second.
That's correct.
And you'll find out real quickly why the first one left, and usually it's something that you built in your culture and didn't even know it's an unintended consequence.
That's correct. So, guys, I hope that this particular episode helped you out. I hope you were able to gain something, learn something off of this. Again, this is going to be another 2-part series. So we're going to come back, and next week we're going to go into a little bit more into the controllables, what you can and can't control, how to fix some of these things with inside your agency, and maybe there's some issues that's going on. If there's any questions that you do have, please email us at podcast@insandbeyond.com. That's podcast@insandbeyond.com. If you do want to see us live or some kind of live, you can check us out on YouTube. It's at Insurance and Beyond Podcast on YouTube. And you'll also be able to pull us up on all the other podcast platforms out there. Guys, we thank you so much for your time. Remember to listen, learn, and earn your way to success. We'll see you next week.
Have a good day.